Hello, everyone. I clean my glasses. Oh man, blind with these things. Today we're talking about stress management practices. Oh my god, that's super dirty. We're gonna go over a bunch of things today. So stress, obviously, stress is just a part of everybody's life. It's something that's unavoidable. We're all gonna have it, and we're gonna have it in different kind of qualities. There's stress that's like stress right now. This needs to be dealt with like right now, and then there's stress that is long term that just kind of hangs on and lingers there. Sometimes it can be quite powerful, but it can hang on. So we are going to go over a few different strategies to manage stress on different levels. Yeah, if you're joining the live, please say hello and drop us a win. I got Robin here. Hey, Robin. Her win today is visiting her youngest daughter. Awesome. That's exciting. Always good to be around family and catch up with everybody. Um, my win for today, Casey and I watched the Olympia this past weekend, which is like um, the Stanley Cup of bodybuilding. It's like the biggest show of the year. It's the one that everybody's known for. And so we watched that this weekend and really just totally lit a fire under my ass. Um, Something that I've been missing is being around bodybuilding like that more for my own personal goals. And it's been a really fun couple days coming out with that energy, bringing that into my own practices. Eva, hey Eva. Eva's win is push through a lot of shit to get yourself to the gym tonight. Yes, that's the good stuff right there. Honestly, those are like I know every time someone comments this, I say the same thing, and I can't be more genuine about this response, which is those are the best workouts. I love when people comment those wins because those times when you have like all that mental adversity, you're tired, you're hungry, you just don't feel like going. You had a bad day, moods are bad. Whatever the reason is, we build up all of these reasons in our mind. Where we're like, I just want to go back to my comfortable place. And when you step outside of that and lead with courage and go to the gym anyways, it really solidifies a whole different kind of self power that you can tap into, where you start to understand, like, hey, because I know Eva, you're gonna have that workout, and you're gonna feel so good after, and it's gonna have that effect when you walk away, being like, man, I really didn't want to go, but I'm so glad that I did, and it solidifies that ability to overcome the things in your mind, creating more of that mental toughness, that mental resiliency, to be able to continue to do the things that you said you would do, which is my old coach, my mentor's uh, definition of discipline. It stuck with me ever since I was like 15, 14. I used to sit in his garage and he would teach me about life and hockey and responsibility. And he said, discipline is doing the things you said you'd do long after the mood you said them in has left you. Let that sink in for a minute. Doing the things you said you would do long after the mood that you said them in has left you, because that's when it matters. That's when it really counts. So, anyways, bit of a ramble there because that's exciting stuff for me. All right, so let's talk about stress. I mean, everybody has it. We all feel it at different points. We all feel it every single day. It's an emotion that, just like any other emotion, and what's stressful to one person might not be stressful to another. Stress is very much a part of our perception of events and of life and everything. We create our own stress based off of how we perceive things. Obviously, there's things that are just very commonly perceived the same way for everybody. So there's things like that are just going to be stressful for everyone. But once again, it still is our own perception of the events that are at hand, and what's stressful to us and what's not. So, an example might be, um, Oh, I gotta think of one off the case. If you have one off the top of your head, like stress, how it can be perceived as stressful for one person but not for another. Let's say, okay, here a good one right off the bat. Would be figuring out macros. For me, that's not stressful. I really don't find it stressful at all anymore because I've done it so many times and I've been doing it for so many years. When I look at my chronometer and I'm like, oh, I've got 4 grams of carbs left and 34 grams of protein and 8 grams of fat. It doesn't stress me out because I look at it and go, okay, well, I can solve this problem for sure. I can either choose to hit those macros. I can maybe play with a little bit of flexibility and shift the macros a bit and hit the calories. I've done it for so long that I know how to manage that sort of situation. Whereas for somebody who's brand new in the program, maybe you're like month 4 and you just found like a really solid rhythm with your macros, and then you come up to a situation like that where you're like, oh, I have no idea what to do. That can be very stressful. And the difference between myself and that person is just our perception, our experiences, and what we perceive as being stressful. So, just a side note, I like to kind of touch on that just to reaffirm that stress is it is within our control. We do get to assign and choose what things are stressful to us and what aren't. It doesn't feel like we have that control. And there's things that I know that are going to stress me out. I like finances. If finances are struggles, finances are something that are just like it's hard to dissociate the stress from that. But um, it's something that we can always be working on, something we can always be learning. I can tell you for sure that I grew up from a family that was we didn't have much money, and I can recall a time from way back when I was a child, and my parents were really strapped. My mom had some late library books, and it was going to be like $2.50 in late fees, and it was so stressful to her. Like it was like, man, it just pushed her over the top because she had so many other stressors going on. That just added to it, and that was finances were a big stress, and that stress is something that I started to take onto my life because I saw it. You as we grow, we it's nurture and nature, right? We learn patterns from our behaviors and our environments, and that was something that I learned was that finances are stressful, and I've had to unlearn that over years and years of practice of knowing that if I choose to assign stress to my finances, then I'll feel it. But if I choose to look at it in a different way, and I'm going to go through some strategies that have helped me do this with that personal example myself, where I've been able to take what normally would have been a 9 out of 10 stressor for me and experience it as a 3 out of 10 stressor. All right, so let's get into it. Long preamble on that, but let's talk about these strategies. So the first thing is, obviously we understand stresses are like we perceive things to be stressful. We choose our stressors, more or less. It's very simply put. But oh no, I just blanked on my thought. But when those stressors come in, we have 2 parts of our brain that start to activate. One is the emotional brain, and one is the logical brain. When emotions are high, so stress is high, then emotion is starting to dominate. And we can start to take stressors that should feel like a 1% hit and turn them into a 10% hit because that emotion is so ramped up that everything that adds on top of it feels so much bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. I feel like everybody has experienced this, and if you don't recognize it, you will at the end of this call. When we can stop the emotional brain, shut it down for a minute, and we can access logic again, then a lot of those things that feel like huge stressors all of a sudden feel like much smaller stressors. And you start to realize that a late library fee, even though it feels like it's a 15% hit on your stress, and you got a maximum of 100%, you got 15% hit by that 200 or $2.50 late fee. It's the emotional snowball is out of control. But when you stop and you sit back and you think logic, like Okay, if I take my empty bubbly cans to the depot, I've got two for $2.50, and that's whatever. It's $2.50, right? So the first strategy is when you're feeling that imminent stress, that acute stress, the stress where it's like action needs to happen right now. Like, you go from 0 to 100 real quick because you had a conflict with a colleague, or um, you forgot something, or you got a flat tire on your way to work. Whatever it is, when you have those acute situations, the stress just spikes. We want to immediately try to stop the emotional brain and re-access our logical brain. Another kind of side journey, but a good example is with this is we don't make good decisions when we're stuck in that emotional brain. When we're stuck in that high level of stress, we don't do what we want to do. We do what we feel like we have to because it's like that injured dog syndrome where you're like, you just have to survive. Even if it's something small, like having a flat tire, it's like everything is ramped up and you're just like, you're just trying to keep it together. And that's when usually in arguments or whatever, we say things we don't mean to. We make poor decisions. We don't think through the consequences properly, those sorts of things. So the example, the side journey I was going to go on is like going grocery shopping when you're hungry. When you're hungry and you have that, physical urge where you're like, I want to eat food. Your body is like, I need energy and I want quick energy. That's when you start buying all the stuff that you shouldn't be buying or you wouldn't normally buy because you're just not in your normal state of being. So accessing that normal state of being is something we can do very quickly using some of these techniques. The first one is deep breathing. I'm going to actually, before I say this, I'm going to say one more quick thing because this gives all the background information to understand why these things work. Our brains can only truly focus on one thing at a time, only one specific task. It feels like we can multitask sometimes, but that's just called as executive functioning, where you can switch back and forth between tasks really quickly. But you can look up the research for it. We truly can only focus on doing one specific thing at a time. So when emotional brain and those emotions are really ramped up, you can use this for stress. You can use this for anger. You can use this for any emotion that is. You can use it for like when you're super excited and you want to bring yourself back down to a normal state. Any emotion, you can use these strategies, but you want to give your mind a complex task that it has to focus on. And when you do that, if you can maintain that focus, the emotion simmers down, it settles out, and you've accessed logic again. You can then think about things clearly, make good decisions. It's a whole premise behind if you have a big financial decision to make, you want to sleep on it. You're giving yourself that time to let the emotion dissipate so that you can access logic again and make a decision that is, well-rounded beyond with everything that you're considering. So acute stressors, deep breathing techniques. It's not just breathing in, breathing out deeply. That's too easy. We want to add as many layers to it as we can to create that really complex task. So you're thinking about taking, we're going to go through box breathing. So you're thinking about taking a 3 to 5 second inhale. You're going to hold that breath for 3 to 5 seconds. You're going to exhale for 3 to 5 seconds. You're going to hold empty lungs for 3 to 5 seconds. So we're keeping a tempo. If we're doing this as an exercise, it's 3-3-3-3 or 4-4-4-4 or whatever, right? It gets pretty challenging beyond 5 seconds unless you're like a surfer and you've got amazing lung control. What we're doing when we're doing this is we're also going to add visualization. So as you breathe in, you're counting. So we've got the breath. You're focusing on a physical sensation. You're counting. And we're also going to use imagery. So as you're counting, you're thinking, inhale, 1, 2, 3. Like, and you're going to draw that line of a box. You're going to hold that breath for 3 seconds and visualize drawing the line across the top of the box. And then you're going to exhale for 3 seconds and draw the next line. You're going to hold that empty breath and draw the last line, completing the box. And you've done one round of box breathing. You can do this cycle as many times as you need to. And I guarantee you, if you're fully focused on this and you have fully invested in the practice, you will finish the box breathing and immediately you'll go from here to here. And you'll be like, oh my God, okay, I'm still stressed, but I feel so much less stress and I can carry on. I know what I need to do now. Or I know that I can start to think through a solution. All right, so box breathing, it's one of my favorites. Super powerful. You can do it at your desk. Nobody notices. You're just doing your thing, right? You can visualize with your eyes open. You can stare off into space and keep your eyes open. If you're sitting at your desk, nobody notices, right? So I like it because it's really discreet. It's really simple. You can do it in 30 seconds or less and be able to bring yourself back down to a neutral state or much closer to. We can also do things like playing your own game of I Spy. It sounds ridiculous, but it works like a damn. So if you're sitting at a desk, this is where it works best. If you're stationary in one spot, pick a color that's hard to find. Or if it's a color that's easy to find, look for hard objects. Don't look for the obvious stuff. If I'm looking around my room for yellow things, I'm like, oh, my DeWalt light's right there. The blanket's got yellow. The fireplace is on, that's yellow. There's an envelope that's yellow. Too easy, right? You want to think about the hard stuff. And so you're actually searching the room, finding what things you can find that are hard to see that are yellow. There's a little tiny light on my printer that's yellow. I didn't notice that before. Looking through everything. Oh, my keyboard is showing different colors all at once. I've got a fancy keyboard. And there's yellow mixed in there. I can look on the other side of the room. There's a stack of bananas way off in the distance. So we're looking for difficult tasks. You can do this with like vision, like I Spy. You can do it with sounds, so you can sit quietly and think like, oh, what are 5 sounds that like are hard for me to hear? I can hear the dog gumming on her toy, like things like that, right? We're not listening for the obvious things. We're trying to put our mind to work. So you can do it visually. You can do it with your like auditory with your ears. You can even do it with smells. If you're not stationary, you can walk around and smell things. This is like everybody's heard about going on nature walks and smelling the flowers. That's the whole purpose of it, is you're going around and you're investing yourself in trying to find different smells, and you're focusing on a task, and that's what brings relaxation from those nature walks. You can even do it with taste. You can put something like a candy in your mouth, and you can go through. You can describe the texture of the candy, the taste of it. You can move it around your mouth and see if the taste changes based on where it is on your taste buds. You can all kinds of things, right? So I hope you're getting the point of this, where you're looking for specific things to keep your mind active. And then the last thing with these acute things is distraction. And distraction works really well. There's a time and a place for it. Distraction, as a side note, can be a very maladaptive coping mechanism. It can be a very detrimental one, because you can reduce the stress, but then you never actually deal with the stressor. And so that stress keeps coming, and every time it comes back bigger and bigger and bigger. But there's a time and a place for it, and it can be used effectively. And that's where, playing a game on your phone, working on a puzzle, doing stuff like that can really help a lot. Right? So those are a few of my favorite like acute stress management techniques. There's many, many more. You can find your object is to get your mind focused on something else immediately. And you want to use, like I said over and over again here, a very complex task, so that you can't access that executive functioning, be like, I'm focusing on this. Oh, I'm stressed. Oh, back to here. Oh, I'm stressed. Oh, back to here. Oh, you want to keep it so it's like you're focused on this thing. You have to do it. Sudoku puzzles, you have to be really focused to try and get everything in the right spot. Stuff like that, right? Now, that's great. Works for the short-term stressors. What about longer-term stressors? Now, finances is such a great example because you can have immediate stressors like a late phone bill or something, or I don't know, paydays got pushed back because it's a long weekend and you have bills that are supposed to come out and you're like, oh no, what do I do? So finances are great because it can a great example because it can be an acute stressor, but it can also be a long-term stressor. If you've got mountains of debt and you're like, holy crap, like how am I going to manage all of this? Like I have no idea how I'm going to pay off this mortgage or pay off my student loans, or I got like 8 years of car payments left. Like, how am I going to manage all of this? Those are the long term stressors, and they're more complicated. But with those stressors, the best way and the most effective way that you're going to actually be able to manage that stressor is by changing the circumstance. And this might not be an overnight thing. Changing the circumstance can take quite a while. It can take months, it can take years. But when you think about changing the circumstances, you can't just look at it like, be like, oh, I got all these car payments. Okay, I'm going to change the circumstance by making more car payments over the scheduled period, and then it'll be less. It doesn't work. You're not actually truly doing anything different. You have to then create a goal. You have to come up with a plan of like, how can I, if I've got 8 years left on these car payments and I want to have them done in 4, that's basically like doubling my payments every month. Like that's impossible. Well, it is when you don't think through it at all. But if you start to actually break things down and create an action plan for it and set mini goals, kind of like what we do for a weight loss, right? You look at, I got to lose 50 pounds and it seems like way too big to do. But if we break it down into 5-pound increments, then it becomes something manageable. And we can then start to make a plan of like, oh, I could make a plan on how to lose 5 pounds. I have no idea how I'm going to lose 50, but I could definitely figure out how to lose 5, right? So take that big long-term stressor. Yeah, I'm going to use finances again because it's a simple one. First thing you could do is create a budget. If you don't have a budget, which I feel like is a kind of become a lost practice, then create a budget. Go through all of your finances. And I'm going to tell you right off the bat, it's going to stress the fuck out of you. But when you see everything in its place and you've been living like that for months, looking through it's going to stress you out. But when you step back and realize, like, I've been living this way for months and I've been getting through just fine, and you see all of the areas where you're spending way too much money on things that don't matter. You're spending $200 a month on Starbucks. You're going out to eat and spending another $200 a month paying for restaurant foods. And obviously, you can't just cut these things down to zero, but you can cut them in half. You could maybe cut it down to 25%. You might only be able to cut it to 75%. But if you go through that budget, then you can start to look at this is step one, by the way. This is your first action plan as you're making a budget. So you're like, oh, okay, I'm going to become aware of everything that's happening. Now that I can start to make some changes. Like I'm going to change my budget. So instead of spending $1,300 a month on things that I don't necessarily need, I'm going to cut that down to spending $500 a month on those things. This amount's going to go to coffee shops. This amount's going to go to dining out. This amount's going to go to all the fun little one-clicky Amazon things or Temu things I want to get. And you've already created a massive change in your budget, which then you can start to create a plan on, I'm either going to take this money and put it straight onto my debt. I'm going to take this money and put it into a high interest savings account and grow it so that I can get more out of it to pay more debt, maybe once a year. If you have a mortgage that you can make annual lump sums on, then you can create a plan of like, oh, how could I use this money and grow it the most each year so that when that lump sum comes up, I can empty the tank and get the most out of it, right? So I could keep going on and on and on about this, but the key point of this is you're creating an action plan. You're creating mini manageable goals and action plans on how to make them happen. And that alone will reduce your stress a tremendous amount. I'm going to go through one more example because we're at 25 minutes here. And I appreciate you all for hanging in. I hope this has been super beneficial. But the last example, because it's more complicated, would be relationships. If you have a really challenging relationship with a parent, a sibling, maybe a spouse, doesn't matter. If you have that stressor that is just a constant stress input in your life, you can do the same practice. Sit down and actually journal what stresses you out about the relationship. What are the things that are bothering you? What are the things that are putting pressure on you that make you really uncomfortable? And you can create a list and become more aware of why that relationship is stressful to you. You can then take that list and you can go see a therapist and you can talk to them and come up with strategies. Boundary setting is most definitely something that's going to have to happen. You're probably going to have some tough conversations, or some uncomfortable conversations. I like to call them sweaty palm conversations, um, that are going to cause acute anxiety in the moment, but they're going to start to create these little ways to create solutions in the relationship. Sometimes, and relationships are tricky because there's two people, right? You can only control what you do. You can't control what they do, how they respond, but you can come up with strategies. Knowing who this person is, you can come up with strategies on how to approach them with things. Maybe you've been approaching things completely wrong the entire time. You've been doing the best that you can, and you're doing it the way that you think works, or the way that you think it needs to be done, but you haven't tried other ways of doing it. And maybe that's the case. Like an example would be, um, if you're trying to help a family member that is struggling, and you're like, "Oh, they need to do this, they need to do this, they need to do this." The approach that might change things for you is to think, "Oh, maybe I should ask what they want as help." Like, I can go and talk to them and be like, "Hey, um, I really want to help you. I know that you have these struggles or whatever. What's the best way that I can help you?" And you get the input from them. Or maybe it's the other way around, where you have a family member that's really pushing on you, being like, "You need to change this," blah 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 blah, and it's something that you just feel they don't understand, and it's something that's really beneficial for you. Um, Maybe it's your weight loss journey and your focus, your macro counting. Like, this is unhealthy, macros are bad. Um, then maybe the approach, instead of getting defensive, is to sit down and have a conversation with them around, like, this is why it helps me, and this is my approach to it. This is what support I have. These are the things, and you give them more understanding and awareness. Like, there's all kinds of different ways to approach some of these, like, relationship struggles and challenges. And I promise you that, like, if you have an action plan and you get the support that you need, you read some books. If you need to read books, read some books. Um, Talk to somebody if you need to talk to somebody. Have sweaty palm conversations with the person, or even just have just a general discussion with them to either help them understand something more, or to understand something more yourself. All of these things are things that you can do that will immediately start to make that stressor smaller. So I know I went for a while on that, but I wanted to go over something that was a little bit more gray area than finances. Finances they're just a thing. They're a number. And so we can do everything on this side, and they're not going to do anything to us. We already know what to expect there. It gets more complicated, like I said, when you have forces on either side and you're not sure how to manage those. That's where those long-term stressors can become a lot more challenging. So just wanted to go through that. I hope that this has been super beneficial for you guys. If you have questions on this stuff, shoot me a message, shoot Casey a message. We're happy to chat with you about it. I worked as a mental health nurse for, like, just shy of 9 years, and so it's kind of is my forte, amongst my training, my former profession, and then my own personal experiences and all that sort of stuff. So we've got tons and tons and tons of different strategies and thoughts and ideas, and just a good habit of thinking outside the box of things we can help you guys with, whatever stressor that you have, we can help you think through different ways of approaching it, or creating plans that can make that stressor lesser. Right? So that's all I got for you today. If you're watching on replay, please hashtag replay and drop your win and your biggest takeaway. Other than that, thank you so much for watching, and we will see you on Casey's Live on Friday or in Everfit. Okay, take care, everybody.